to the south of France. Well done. 1 from 1. Question 2, maybe a bit more difficult, I think. But what year did Morgan Escaray make his Super League debut in?
Debut. We already agreed it's pronounced debut. Super League debut.
I mean, if you want an extra clue, he scored a try on debut at home versus Bradford.
Oh, it's before 2014 then.
Well, it's before 2015.
What do you mean?
Well, Bradford were in Super League in 2014. That was the first year of Super League pod.
Yes, yeah, that's what I mean. It was, yeah. Well, okay, when I say before 2014, I mean inclusive.
Oh, obviously.
That's fine.
Anyway, both could be true.
I'm gonna say his first year was 2011.
It was 2013.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay, so which two former French internationals played alongside both Simon and Escaray in their Super League debuts in 2010 and 2013 respectively? One of these players was a halfback and the other was a forward.
I'm going to go for Thomas Bosk.
Yep.
And Oliver Elmer.
No, it was Jamil Fakir.
Fakir.
Yeah. Then, this is according to their Wikipedia stats.
Always reliable.
Yep. Which of the 4 players we've named, so Mikel Simon, Morgan Escaray, Thomas Bosk and Jamal Fakir, which of those 4 has played the most games for France?
I'd say it'd have to be Thomas Bosk.
According to Wikipedia, it's Jamel Fakir. Fakir played 30 times for France, Bosk 27, Simon 17, and Escaray 11.
I will bow to Wikipedia's knowledge.
Yeah. There you go.
Wow.
I thought I could then sort of run off into other French player questions, but I would have been like digging for ages to find good ones. I was going to go with which of those 4 players had scored the most tries for France, but Bosk and Escaray both scored 6. And then it became like how reliable are other sources. So I didn't have the time to spend picking out like who's played the most Super League games, which French players played the most Super League games, who was the first French player to play in Super League, that sort of stuff. But obviously we had a French team in the first year of Super League, didn't we? So
I was going to say, so
in the first game of Super League. So who would we have picked?
He's the first player to run out.
Yeah,
it's first player to run out.
He'll have been the captain, would he?
I think he might have been.
But yeah. I mean, Bradford have had a few French players over the years, haven't they? They had Elimer was there.
Yeah.
Jean-Philippe Bale was there.
Very briefly. Jamal Fakir was a Bradford player for a bit.
Yeah.
It's funny when you asked the question before about your favourite French player. Elimer was one of the first names that came to my head. A bit of a kind of slightly loose cannon. Let's be kind about it. But a guy who had a very good Super League career, you'd have to say, kind of featured in a lot of seasons. And yeah, for me, he's kind of right up there as one of my favourite players. Along with players like Thomas Bosk, who I always kind of admired as the purity of his ability to play a league was kind of fantastic.
Yeah, I mean,
what about you?
Wigan, we had Jerome Guisset for a year before the year before the Catalans started. So obviously he was someone that I like because he played for us for a bit, but it was when Wigan were bad. Elmer played 43 times for the Bulls. Didn't realise it was that long. He made his debut in the UK competition back in 2002. Did Elmer?
Yeah.
We also obviously Navarrete and Escaré became the first two French players to win a grand final at Wigan in 2018. So that they'd have to be up there, wouldn't they, for me? Escaré, when he did the old switcheroo where he'd sort of come off the bench and no one was quite sure what position he'd end up playing, but he'd have a bit of an impact.
Yeah.
But in my head, like you do think of people like Elmer and Guisset and players like that, players who had a little bit of mongrel about. Fakir was obviously another one. A bit of extra feistiness about them, didn't they? Those players. You don't really think of. I mean, you say Bosc, but like he's the only one of the French halfbacks that's really taken charge in Super League at all. And even then, most of the time, he was second fiddle to someone else at the Catalans, be it Price or Scott Giroux, who sounds like he could be French, but he wasn't. Yeah. I'm trying to think of any of the French wingers who've left a seasoned impression on the Super League. People like Frederic Vacary and Dimitri Pello. Was he French or was he another nationality? Jordan Sigismo. He was talented. What happened to him? Fuad Yahar, I suppose, has left an impression, hasn't he? At times in his career. These
players who are very enigmatic in their approach. They flash brightly but briefly.
Where would you class? We've had a few hookers of note, haven't we? I suppose Pelissier, Rinaldi, Tuxegas. They've all been okay. Do we class Bentley as a Frenchman, considering he's played so many times for France? I guess we have to.
Yeah, I guess you do. Yeah.
Do it. So, a player who's never played for the Catalans in Super League is maybe the best French player in Super League these days, Theo Farge. Where does he rank amongst the likes of Bosc, Escaré, that sort of player?
Well, he's made the transition from potential to actually being a key part of the best team in the league over the last couple of years, hasn't he? So you'd have to say he's probably been the most successful on that basis, even though he's you will sometimes pick him out as the best player on the field, but more often he's a part of a greater whole, isn't he?
Yeah, usually you're looking at Lomax, Coote, Percival, Walmsley, Roby.
Yeah.
It's a great side, isn't it? I fucking hate them.
See, it's going to be so good when you can get back to hating them on a weekly basis, isn't it?
Yeah. I'm just trying to think of other French players who've made a big impression. Tony Gigot. We haven't talked about Tony Gigot. He won a Lance Todd Trophy for being man of the match in a game at Wembley. In the only major title won by a French side.
Yeah, Remy Castilla could go down as one of those very, very good players.
Where does he rank in sort of? Because he's got longevity too, hasn't he, Casti? He's overtaken someone whose name I forget, the old number 13 at the Dragons. Who was that? What's he called? Anyway, he's overtaken him as the French player who's played the most times in Super League, hasn't he?
Yeah, and he kind of, he had a brief spell in the NRL, but the games that he played in the NRL, he didn't disgrace himself by any means. He played very well for the Roosters when he got the chance to play.
But it was that it was that Roosters side that won 3 minor premiers in a row, weren't it?
Yeah, and he was a bit part player, but when he came in, he was good. So that tells you something about his quality. You know, if he can be part of a great side like that and not look like a weak link.
Yeah, because you had like Ben Garcia went to Australia a couple of times and didn't make it over there, but has been solid for the Catalans. I say solid, erratic, but quality at times.
Yes.
Right.
They'll have a little bit of erraticness in them.
They call it Gallic flair to sort of.
Yeah, if you're going to engage in stereotypes, yes, they do.
It's like if any of those players were like Australian, they'd be like rocks or diamonds or grubs or, you know, that one of those sayings attached to them. But
exactly.
It's enigmatic or Gallic flair is what you have to say about French players. Anyway, we shall move on from the quiz and move into the wrap-up of episode 270. So, Alan, we reached the end of another show. I guess you've not been in Scarborough long enough to have any strong recommendations from your sort of summer getaway to the coast?
No, we've basically walked on the beach and chucked pebbles into the water, which was very nice and it was very therapeutic. It was much needed. So yeah, but yeah, other than that, I can't really recommend anything. But yes, having a paddle in a patch of sea near you is probably my only recommendation that I can bring at the moment. But yes. What about you? How are things with you?
We've got new fences this week.
Hey.
Been waiting on that a while because obviously supply chains have been getting back up and running.
So he didn't just leave a load of tills in your backyard and just say, "I'll be back soon."
There was a bit of that. It felt like that was what was happening for the first period for the first few days of it, and apparently there was a bit of a heated fallout between the garden contractor guy and the fence company that nearly kicked off in our garden. Apparently.
I'm glad you completed that sentence because it sounded like he was arguing with a fence.
Yeah. Well, there was the fence suppliers and the guy that we dealt with who was not the fence suppliers, but he uses them to do the fencing on the jobs that anyway, whatever. And then I think because of all of that, they left a couple of bits, so we nearly didn't get the bit of the fence between ourselves and our next door neighbours, which was like an important part of the job because that was what instigated the job being needed in the first place, because the fence had disappeared in between us and next door, but it didn't really affect us because it's hidden by the conservatory, but for them it affected them because it was like part of their patio, next to their patio, but we also needed the whole back of the fencing onto the part behind us replacing. Anyway, so there was a bit of an issue there, and then they were meant to reset something in the corner, like a you know the gravel board things that they have at the bottom of fence panels. Well, on the last fence panel between us and our next door neighbour, it had two flagstones turned on their side as the gravel board because our garden slopes down, whereas they next door had theirs levelled out. So it's a bit kind of stepping down. Anyway, they hadn't put this thing back in, so we could see all the earth from next door's garden, and I was worried like it was going to start falling out into our garden and then they lose the end of their garden or something anyway. So I had to use whatever manly prowess I have to put this flagstone back in, and it wasn't straightforward, but I achieved it in the end with a bit of a brute force, so that made me feel manly at the weekend. But yeah, I can't say I'd recommend the people who I got, even though the fence job is good. The peripheral to it has been left quite messy, and one of them nearly hit another one with a shovel. So I don't really. Yeah,
it doesn't sound like a hearty recommendation to me.